The enigma of time. Travel humanity had always been at the forefront of innovation, conquering the stars with a relentless drive that no other species could match. While the other advanced races in the galaxy, the Mayans, the Zorathians, and even the mysterious Eldar, spent centuries attempting to unlock the secrets of time travel, none had succeeded. Their efforts were met with catastrophic failures, temporal anomalies that tore through space-time, leaving worlds devastated and civilizations on the brink of collapse. On Earth, however, things were different. Eccentric physicist Edward Kennedy had been working in secret for years, conducting experiments that others deemed too dangerous to attempt. His calculations were so complex that they broke supercomputers, his theories so unorthodox that even his peers questioned his sanity. Yet Kennedy was undeterred. He believed that the key to time travel lay not in brute force technology, but in understanding the subtle nuances of the quantum world. One fateful night, after years of tireless work, Kennedy finally cracked the code. He stood in his dimly lit laboratory, staring at the small device in his hands, a revolutionary breakthrough that would change the course of history. The device thrummed with energy, its circuits glowing with a soft blue light. Kennedy's heart raced with anticipation as he prepared to test it for the first time. If his calculations were correct, this would be the moment that humanity became the masters of time itself, but someone on his team talked. Within days, the entire galaxy was buzzing with the news that a human had solved the enigma of time travel. The Mayans, who had come closest to success with their prototype time machine, were enraged. Their top scientist, Karos, seethed with envy and greed. He knew that the human discovery could perfect the Mayan time machine, making it stable and reliable. But Karos had no intention of working with the humans. He vowed to seize Kennedy's secrets by any means necessary. The Mayan spies were quick to act. In a brutal midnight raid, they assaulted Kennedy's lab. The battle was fierce, and the humans were outmatched by the superior Mayan technology. But Kennedy had anticipated such a move. As the Mayan soldiers stormed the lab, he triggered a series of explosives that destroyed all of his research and prototypes. In the chaos that followed, Kennedy vanished, becoming the sole keeper of stable time travel. Karos was beyond enraged. He mobilized the mighty Mayan armada, ordering them to invade Earth and capture Kennedy at any cost. Humanity's defenses were formidable, but they paled in comparison to the vast Mayan fleet. Defeat seemed inevitable. In a hidden bunker deep beneath the surface of Earth, the planet's top generals met with Kennedy. The scientist, now a fugitive, proposed an audacious plan. They would infiltrate the Mayan mothership, steal their failed time machine, and use Kennedy's knowledge to make it work. With this technology, Earth would have the edge it needed to survive the coming invasion. As the Mayan warships darkened Earth's skies, humanity's fate hung in the balance. The Mayan overlords were ruthless, and their conquest of Earth seemed assured. But Kennedy and his elite covert team had one last desperate mission: to board the Mayan flagship, swipe the time machine, and alter the course of history itself. Failure meant the end of human freedom, the end of everything they had fought for. The heist begins. Kennedy and his team moved swiftly through the bowels of the Mayan mothership, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The air was thick with the smell of recycled air and alien metal as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. Every step was a calculated risk, every shadow a potential threat. The stakes had never been higher. "Jack, you're with me," Kennedy whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of alien machinery. "We're going after the time machine. Sullivan, take the rest of the team and raise some hell. Buy us as much time as you can." Sullivan nodded grimly. "We'll give them a show they won't forget." The team split up, each group focused on their critical objectives. Kennedy and Jack, guided by stolen schematics, wound their way deeper into the ship. The hum of alien machinery grew louder with each step, the sound reverberating through the metal walls like a living thing. They rounded a corner and froze. Ahead lay the lab housing the prototype time machine, a sleek, intricate device thrumming with barely contained energy. But a squad of heavily armed Mayan guards blocked their path, their insectoid eyes scanning the area with mechanical precision. "I'll handle this," Jack muttered, His fingers flew over his wrist computer, hacking into the ship's systems with the precision of a master thief. The lab door hissed open. Alarms suddenly silenced as the guards whirled around in confusion. Kennedy and Jack seized their chance, slipping past the guards and darting inside the lab. The door slammed shut behind them, cutting off any pursuit. And there it was, the Mayan time machine. It was a marvel of alien engineering, its surface covered in glowing runes and pulsating circuits. Kennedy approached it reverently, his mind already racing with the calculations needed to make it functional. "Cover me," he told Jack, setting to work with single-minded focus. He tore open panels, rerouting circuits and integrating his own knowledge into the alien tech. The machine was a mess of wires and components, but Kennedy could see the underlying logic of its design. It was close, so close to working. Elsewhere on the ship, Sullivan's team moved from one strategic point to another, planting explosives with practiced efficiency. The charges set, they took up defensive positions, ready for the inevitable response. It came swiftly. Alarms blared as Mayan security forces converged on their location, plasma fire filling the corridors. The commandos returned fire, the air thick with the stench of ozone and burnt metal. "Kennedy, whatever you're doing, hurry the hell up!" Sullivan shouted into his comm, ducking as a plasma bolt sizzled past his head. In the lab, Kennedy worked frantically, sweat beading on his brow. Jack stood tensely by the door, rifle trained on the entrance. The sounds of distant battle echoed through the ship, growing closer with each passing second. "Almost there," Kennedy muttered, his hands moving with the speed of a man possessed. Just a few more calibrations. Suddenly, the door shuddered under a heavy impact. Then another. The Mayans had found them. "Kennedy!" Jack yelled, his voice edged with desperation. Kennedy made his final adjustment and slammed the activation switch. The time machine pulsed with blinding white light, a low thrum building to a deafening crescendo. The lab door burst open and Caro stormed in, flanked by a platoon of elite soldiers. But they were too late. In a flash of searing radiance, Kennedy and the time machine vanished, leaving only a scorched crater behind. At that same instant, Sullivan's team detonated their charges. Explosions ripped through the mothership, sending gouts of flame and debris spiraling into the void. Klaxons wailed as the mighty vessel shuddered under the onslaught. On Earth, Rebel Command watched their sensor feeds with breathless expectation. A tense silence filled the room. Then a shimmering portal flared to life, and Kennedy tumbled through, the stolen time machine cradled in his arms. Cheers erupted as he staggered to his feet, a grin splitting his exhausted face. "We did it," he rasped, his voice barely audible over the din. "We have the time machine, and I've jumped us ahead 2 days. We have a window to study this tech, to even the odds." The rebels wasted no time. Scientists swarmed over the Mayan device, reverse engineering its secrets with fevered intensity. Bit by bit, they unraveled its mysteries, uncovering a fatal flaw in the enemy's shield technology. Earth's fighters were outfitted with this new knowledge, their hulls gleaming with jury-rigged alien weaponry. The resistance prepared for its final stand. But Karos had not been idle. Enraged by the theft of his prize, he ordered the full might of the Mayan war machine to descend on Earth. Thousands of ships poured into the planet's orbit, blackening the sky with their sinister silhouettes. Faced with this overwhelming force, Kennedy made a fateful decision. The last stand armed with the time machine and a desperate plan, Kennedy volunteered for one last mission, one that could change the course of the war. He would go back to the moment of the heist, using the chaos to plant a virus deep inside the mothership, a virus set to activate at the crucial moment of the final battle. With a flash of light, Kennedy vanished into the time stream, reappearing in the heart of the enemy stronghold. His pulse pounded as he evaded patrols and security systems, making his way to a critical data node. There, he uploaded the virus, a malicious code that would bring the Mayan fleet to its knees. His task complete, Kennedy activated the time machine once more, jumping back to the raging battle in Earth's skies. The mothership loomed above the carnage, its weapons raining devastation upon the rebel forces. But as Kennedy materialized, the virus came to life. Across the Mayan fleet, systems failed and shields flickered out of existence. The invaders were suddenly vulnerable, their technological advantage stripped away in an instant. Earth-S fighters seized the opportunity, concentrating their fire on the crippled Mayan ships. Explosions blossomed like fiery flowers as the enemy vessels crumpled under the onslaught. On the mothership's bridge, Karos watched his fleet fall into disarray, realization dawning on his features. He knew the treachery that had occurred, the virus that had undone him. But he would not go quietly. With cold, calculating precision, Karos focused his remaining firepower on a single target: the rebel base housing the time machine and Earth's hopes for victory. If he could not have the device, he would ensure that no one else could either. The base's defenses, unprepared for the concentrated barrage, crumbled like sand before the tide. Kennedy could only watch in horror as the complex was consumed by roaring flames, the time machine lost in the inferno. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Kennedy's eyes hardened with tenacity. The battle was not yet over. Earth still had one last bold strategy to play. The base shuddered as another Mayan blast struck home, alarms blaring and smoke filling the air. Kennedy sprinted through the chaos, dodging falling debris. He had one shot left. The time machine sat in its reinforced chamber, humming with latent energy. Kennedy slammed the door behind him and rushed to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he input coordinates for the crucial moment before the Mayan fleet's arrival. A deafening explosion rocked the chamber, cracks spider-webbing across the ceiling. Kennedy punched the activation button, the machine whirring to life and enveloping him in a cocoon of shimmering energy. He vanished in a flash of light, just as the roof caved in. Disorientation hit Kennedy like a wave as he rematerialized. He stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console. The rebel command center bustled with activity, oblivious to the impending attack. "General Harris!" Kennedy shouted, rushing to the startled commander. "We need to evacuate immediately! The Mayans are coming!" Harris gaped at him. "Kennedy, how did you— No time!" Kennedy cut him off. "Trust me. We have minutes before their fleet arrives, but I have a plan." Kennedy laid out his strategy, rapid-fire detailing the deployment of their reverse-engineered defenses. Harris barked orders, mobilizing teams to position the cloaked mines and gravity disruptors in a net around Earth. They worked feverishly, racing against the clock. Kennedy's hands shook as he made final adjustments to the disruptor grid. A ping from the long-range sensors made his blood run cold. "Mayan signatures detected," a technician called out. "ETA 3 minutes. Kennedy took a deep breath. This was it. Their one chance to change the future. The Mayan fleet dropped out of FTL, weapons primed. But as they moved to attack formation, chaos erupted. Ships veered wildly off course, caught in the web of gravity distortions. Others vanished in brilliant explosions as they triggered the hidden mines. "Now!" Kennedy shouted. Resistance fighters poured from concealed hangars, their ships dripping with stolen Mayan tech. They swarmed the disoriented alien vessels, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Kennedy watched the battle unfold on the command center's main screen, his heart pounding. They were winning, but he knew it wasn't over yet. Karos was too clever to go down without a fight. Sure enough, the remaining Mayan ships began to regroup. Kennedy saw his window of opportunity closing. He turned to his hand-picked strike team. "It's time," he said grimly. "We're going after Karos." The final confrontation. The team crowded around the time machine, their faces grim with determination. Kennedy input the coordinates for Karos's flagship, energy crackling around them as they made the jump. They materialized in a corridor, alarms blaring and Mayan guards firing at them. The battle was immediate and fierce. Kennedy and his team fought their way through the ship, inching closer to the bridge with each passing moment. Plasma bolts whizzed past, narrowly missing their mark, while return fire from the team took down the Mayan soldiers one by one. Finally, they reached the command center. Kennedy burst through the doors, weapon raised, and there he was. Karos, the alien mastermind behind it all. "It's over, Karos," Kennedy said, his voice steady despite the racing pulse. "Your fleet is in ruins. Earth stands united against you." Karos snarled, but Kennedy could see the calculating look in his eyes. "This war will destroy us both if we let it continue," Kennedy pressed on. But it doesn't have to end this way. I'm offering you a choice, peace and a chance to unlock the secrets of time itself. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant rumble of battle. Then, slowly, Karos lowered his weapon. Perhaps, the alien leader said grudgingly, there is wisdom in your words, human. As the ceasefire was called and the Mayan fleet began its withdrawal, Kennedy felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done it. Earth was safe. But as he looked out at the stars, a chill ran down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was just the beginning of a much larger struggle. Kennedy stood at the viewport of Kronos Station, gazing out at the vast expanse of space. The alliance with the Mayans had borne fruit beyond his wildest expectations. In the years since that fateful battle, humans and aliens had worked side by side, pushing the boundaries of temporal science. The station hummed with activity as researchers from both species scurried about. Kennedy watched as a massive vessel emerged from a shimmering vortex, its hull gleaming with alien alloys. They had done it. Stable long-range jumps were now possible. Impressive, isn't it? Karos's gravelly voice came from behind him. Kennedy turned to face his Mayan counterpart. More than I ever dreamed. But we need to be careful with this power. Karos waved a dismissive tentacle. Careful? Think of the possibilities. We could reshape history itself. That's exactly what worries me, Kennedy replied. Their debate was cut short by a sudden tremor that shook the station. Alarms blared as they sprinted to the main lab. What's happening? Kennedy shouted over the din. A human technician looked up from her console, her face pale. The experimental vortex generator, it's overloading. Before their eyes, a swirling portal tore open in the center of the lab. Through it, they glimpsed a primordial Earth, oceans roiling with the first sparks of life. Shut it down, Kennedy ordered, lunging for the controls. But Karos was faster. The Mayan's eyes gleamed with fanatical purpose as he shoved Kennedy aside. At last, the power to ensure Mayan supremacy. Kennedy staggered back as Mayan soldiers poured into the lab, weapons raised. Karos barked orders in his native tongue, and the aliens moved to secure the vortex generator. What are you doing? Kennedy demanded. You'll contaminate the timeline, Karos sneered. I'm securing our rightful place in history. Mayan DNA will seed your world, and we will rise as the dominant species. Horror dawned on Kennedy as he realized the full scope of Karos's plan. If successful, it would mean the extinction of humanity before it even began. He had to act fast. As Karos turned to initiate the launch of temporal probes, Kennedy made his move. He dove for an emergency panel, slamming his palm on the lockdown button. Blast doors slammed shut, sealing off sections of the station. In the confusion, Kennedy slipped away, his mind racing. He had to warn Earth, had to find a way to stop this madness. But first, he needed to escape. Kennedy sprinted through the corridors of Kronos Station, the sound of Mayan pursuit echoing behind him. Time itself hung in the balance, and he was the only one who could set things right. The escape and the final battle. Kennedy's fingers flew across the escape pod's controls, his heart pounding as he initiated the launch sequence. The pod shuddered, breaking free from Kronos Station's docking clamps. He glanced back at the rapidly shrinking station, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. Alarms blared. Kennedy's eyes darted to the radar display. 3 Mayan fighters streaked toward him, weapons hot. The pod bucked as energy blasts slammed into its hull. Sparks erupted from a nearby console. Come on, Kennedy muttered, pushing the engines to their limits. Earth loomed ahead, a blue-green sanctuary. Another hit rocked the pod, warning lights flashing across the instrument panel. The ship groaned, systems failing. Kennedy gritted his teeth as he entered the atmosphere, the pod shaking violently. Fire licked at the viewports as controls went dark. He wrestled with the manual override, fighting for any semblance of control as the ground rushed up to meet him. The impact drove the air from Kennedy's lungs. Sand sprayed as the pod carved a deep furrow across the Sahara dunes. When it finally ground to a halt, silence fell. Kennedy's vision swam, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. With trembling hands, he reached for the distress beacon, activating it just before darkness claimed him. Miles away, in a hidden resistance base, an alert chimed. Captain Mike Sullivan snapped to attention, scanning the incoming transmission. His eyes widened. "Kennedy," he breathed. He turned to his team. "Gear up! We've got an emergency extraction." As Sullivan's team scrambled to board their stealth aircraft, a Mayan dropship pierced the atmosphere, heading for the crash site. Caros himself oversaw the operation from orbit, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Find Kennedy!" he snarled to his commando leader. "Silence him permanently." The race was on. Sullivan's aircraft streaked across the desert as the Mayan dropship touched down near Kennedy's pod. Alien boots crunched on sand as the commandos fanned out, weapons at the ready. Inside the battered pod, Kennedy stirred. Pain lanced through his body as he blinked, trying to focus. The sound of weapons fire snapped him to full alertness. He peered out the cracked viewport, seeing flashes of energy weapons and hearing the staccato of human gunfire. Sullivan's team had arrived, engaging the Mayans in a brutal firefight. Plasma bolts sizzled past human heads as they took cover behind dunes. Return fire dropped 2 Mayan soldiers, their bodies falling with dull thuds. Kennedy stumbled from the pod, his legs barely supporting him. "Sullivan!" he called out hoarsely. The captain turned, spotting Kennedy. "Cover me!" he shouted to his team, sprinting toward the scientist. Kennedy staggered forward, reaching out as Sullivan closed the distance. "Caros!" he gasped. "He's going to—" A Mayan energy blast struck Kennedy in the side. He cried out, collapsing into Sullivan's arms. "Man down!" Sullivan bellowed. He scooped up Kennedy, racing back to their aircraft as his team laid down, suppressing fire. "We're leaving now." They piled into the aircraft, bullets pinging off its armored hull. The engines roared to life, kicking up a sandstorm as they lifted off. Mayan fighters screamed overhead, but it was too late. Sullivan's craft cloaked, vanishing from sight as it sped toward the resistance base. In the cargo hold, Sullivan worked feverishly to stabilize Kennedy. The scientist's eyes fluttered open, his breath ragged. "Caros," he whispered. "Time vortex. Earth's past." "Save your strength," Sullivan urged, prepping a medical pod. "We'll get you patched up." At the base, a team of scientists waited anxiously. As soon as the aircraft touched down, they rushed Kennedy to the medical bay. Sullivan watched as they placed him in an advanced healing chamber, the scientist's life signs wavering dangerously. "Come on, Kennedy," Sullivan muttered. "We need you to pull through. What the hell did you find out there?" Hours ticked by, and finally, Kennedy stabilized. The lead scientist approached Sullivan, her face grave. "Captain, we've managed to upload his memories to the simulation, but you need to see this for yourself." Sullivan followed her to the hollow chamber. The scientist activated the program, and Kennedy's fractured memories coalesced into a chilling vision. Images flashed by. Caros setting the controls of a massive time vortex, Mayan DNA being injected into Earth's primordial oceans, the timeline warping and shifting.